Hey everybody, welcome to Away Games, a Chicago Cubs podcast hosted by two stand-up comedians who live in New York. I am one of them. I'm Adam Amawala. I am in New York, and I am talking to a very dark version of Kevin. Let me clarify, there's nothing bad going on.
Is there? They're good. I don't know that it's not entirely good going on. I do believe maybe my appearance, this is an audio medium, so obviously It's like they can't see, but Adam is looking bright and sunny in his place, and I look like there's just I look like a Dick Tracy villain in the night, kind of.
You look like somebody who's like being featured in a mob documentary who doesn't want to reveal their identity.
Yeah,
we're gonna have to change your voice for this.
There's like Tony the Tiger commercials and stuff.
Exactly.
It's my look matches most of the vibe for the past week right now.
You had to choose between plugging in your laptop or a light. That is what I've gathered.
And that's what I'm willing to sacrifice. Yes, that is I unplugged the light, and now I sit in darkness where I feel most at home. So
the joys of being a road comic.
Yeah, exactly. As I go through the plains, basically. But yeah, I'll be back. I'll be back in New York in a little bit here, like week and a half.
Yeah, just in time for the Cubs to play at Citi Field against the Mets. And frankly, let's get right into it. By the way, you can follow us at awaygamespod on Twitter and Instagram. The Road Cubs have been something. You and I think you went to 3 and I went to 4. I went to all 4 of the Cubs games at Citi Field last year, and the Cubs won all 4 of them. And the idea of that being a possibility in this moment seems almost like I am still thinking of going to all 3 of those games next week, and I'm already kind of dreading it.
Right. You're already dreading like the third one. I would be like, where it's just like, oh God, do I even, or dreading the third day where it's like, I've already clearly lost 2 is what it feels like.
Well, yeah, because I've already seen that this year. Like when we went out to St. Louis, the Cubs got swept and I was at all of those games, and it's not, I've had that happen a couple times in the past few years where I was at an entire series and the Cubs got swept first in LA and then in St. Louis, and it's not my favorite. And frankly, I was looking a couple months ago when I had these dates circled for the Cubs to play the Mets. I was like, oh, those should be like fairly easy wins, and the Mets are not going to have a lot riding on this, and that has changed.
Yeah, now they both have a lot riding on it. Alonso's up at 40 bombs already. That guy's just for real. You know, it's like and they've been on a real hot streak. I know they've cooled down a little bit, but they had like that 10-1 run. So it's like, yeah, they have something to play for again. I didn't realize with our St. Louis trip, when we just totally bombed out there, the Cubs were trading back and forth, sweeping at home and getting swept at St. Louis, not realizing that was going to be what the entire year is, you know?
Right. Yeah.
It was just like that with the Cardinals. It's like, oh, that's everybody.
Exactly. And I mean, now the Cubs are about to go back home, and obviously they've played great there, but it's one of those things where if that starts to balance out and regress to the mean, but you don't then improve the road numbers, then you're in some real trouble.
It's weird. And I saw, like, I've been driving around a lot, so I didn't jump into the you and Ken Schultz. You guys are messaging about basically the road woes and how much of that to blame on Madden. And basically Ken was saying that like some of this has to fall on Madden. You were saying that it's hard to blame him, specifically with that, like the worst losses of the year that happened this week, back to back, getting walked off. Obviously, the Bryce Harper grand slam, that one I had been driving. I wasn't like watching the game or seeing it. That was a bad enough loss where I didn't get the MLB app alert. I got text alerts from friends who aren't even Cub fans. Like my friend Dave, I picked up my phone and the text said, "Man, I just saw the Harper slam. Unbelievable." And I'm like, well, this isn't good news. Yeah.
Dude, I got a text so I actually had watched the Tuesday night game, that first game of the series, with a friend of mine who's a Phillies fan. And he knows that I DVR games because I'm a weirdo.
Right, you're like the last man. You're the oldest millennial to actually DVR games. And Adam wants no spoilers. He throws that out in the text chain.
I actually still VHS record them, and then I come up and rewind it. He knows that I DVR games, which he should know means don't text me during or about them. And he texted me at about 10:30 that night, and all he said was, "Did you watch the game tonight?" And I was like, "Nope, DVR'd it." And he was like, "Great game. You should watch it later." And I was like, well, now you wouldn't be texting me if it were just a routine game that the Phillies lost. So I went home and I watched the game as I usually do, like fast forwarding through it.
Right.
And as the Cubs were building their 5-0 lead, I just had this impending sense of dread the whole time. And of course, it turned out the way it did. And
it's like watching a movie where you know the ending because it's based on real events. It's like watching the Titanic. Like, well, they're not going to get there, you know?
Totally.
Like, you know.
It was very, very frustrating. And it also, you didn't watch it either, but it was one of those times where as soon as I saw the ball come off of Harper's bat, I just immediately turned the TV off. Like, I was not going to watch him sprint around the bases. I was like, I've seen enough of this.
Yeah. I mean, I'm impressed you went that far. I would have also been like, damn it, man, to the friend who should know better. But also I would have been like, well, fuck it. Now I'm just looking at the score. But you committed to the DVR.
Well, there was a part of me that was like, was there some crazy thing that happened where, the Cubs like almost blew it but didn't, and then he texted because it was like, wow, what a crazy game that was. Right. I had a strong feeling that he would not have texted me if not for the Phillies having won. Right. Also, I'm very grateful that you were out of town because I think you and I very well might have gone to one of those games had you been around.
I absolutely would have, because it's a 2-hour drive from where we live.
And you've never been to that stadium still?
No, right? I still have to cross that one off. So we absolutely would have been there. Yeah, next year. So thank God. I was out of town on that one. Yeah, it just started this week. Really, it started to feel like maybe they won't even make the playoffs. Mm-hmm. It felt like, back to what Ken was saying, what you and Ken were talking about, how much to put on Madden. I think your point was basically like, what can you do with the bullpen at that point, right?
Right. I mean, at that time last week, you're down Kinsler, Cishek, and Kimbrel, so you're kind of you're not playing with the full deck. And when you're intentionally bringing Derek Holland in to face Bryce Harper, that's inherently a problem.
Yeah, and it's like that's the left-on-left thing is the whole reason Holland is there. And it was fun, like Wittenmeyer said something. He tweeted something about Derek Holland being like, when that's your solution, you have no solution or something. And Derek Holland tweeted at him, he's like, because I gave up one homer to Bryce Harper, man, which is a good point. But Derek Holland being like, I'm the problem. So that was funny. I always enjoy when players jump in on Twitter like that. But
one of the insane things about that play, because I've now watched it since, and we've talked about John Boy and his breakdowns before, which are fantastic. But he did a breakdown of that, and for some reason, I am a masochist and watched it. But Harper sprinted around the bases so fast that by the time Holland was walking to the dugout, he actually had to pause for Harper to run past him between third and home.
Man. Yeah, Harper's going 360 before Holland can go.
He ran like inside the park home run speed on a bomb of a home run.
Which is pretty great. Harper celebrated it really well. I do like Bryce Harper, and I think I think he's...
Listen, Harper, and other people brought this up, but Harper had to be the one looking at Bote's Grand Slam last year. So,
oh, that's true. Yeah. So he got his own walk-off Grand Slam.
Turnaround is fair play, and frankly, if you hit the ball that far, you can do just about anything you want, and I have no problem.
And so what I was going to say also, I agree with the bull. You can only use the options you have in the bullpen, and there really wasn't much. I mean, Rowan Wick got his first save this week, and it's about time. He has seemed to be almost the guy you trust the most, who is not even in this bullpen at the time. But I do, when Ken was saying the home road thing is clearly in the heads of the players, I do think that's true. And while I don't think it's fully Madden's fault or anything, I do think at some point the manager matters or he doesn't, right? And like, if we're going to give Joe Madden credit for being the best manager over the course of 162, which is what I always say, I don't think he is the best strategic manager in game. I think he's better than most, but I think where he really stands out is managing people over the course of 162. And if I'm going to give him credit for that, I think I do have to knock him for what's going on this year. With the home road stuff, it is in their heads. They are much worse on the road. And he's got to do something to help. And I don't even think it's mostly his fault, but I don't think we can say it's none his fault.
Yes, I think that's fair. And I think beyond the bullpen, there are also personnel moves that he's made and ways that he's using the defense that don't make sense to me. And obviously some of them become more obvious when people are making errors, but I would rather have KB at third base than Bote. any day of the week. I mean, the game with Harper was a little different because Javi couldn't start because he was sick. But
Right.
I think the day before you had KB move to the outfield and then Bote at third, and he made an error in that one as well. I may be messing up the timeline here, but basically Bote has struggled defensively, which may be part of the reason that he got sent down, which we'll also talk about. I'm sure he'll be back up in a week and a half, but it's been rough, and I can't. Maybe I'm wrong, but I can't remember back-to-back losses hurting that much anytime over this 5-year stretch of the Cubs being good. Because when you have the Harper one, and then the next night with Kinsler walking the bases loaded, and then bases loaded walk, and then a walk-off single. You kind of throw your hands up and you're like, is this just what it's going to be like now?
Yeah, it just starts feeling impossible to
it
win
felt
a game.
Very old Cubs, where you're like, of course they would do this to us again.
Very much so. Yeah, very much so. And it turns out all they needed to win a road series was for it to be a neutral site third game and for it to be Little League. Go play Little League. Go play at the Little League. It's not Little League Stadium, but it kind of is. It's like and getting.
But honestly, and other people brought this up. That may have been the best thing for them. When you're a team that's frustrated and struggling, to be able to get outside of yourself a little bit and just go hang out with some kids who are super excited to see you and play in a minor league park and just have some fun and ride down the hill on a cardboard box. That was the kind of shit that Madden would do, but it was created for them by virtue of being in that game. Let's just go have some fun and take our minds off of all this.
I was just going to say that basically, right. It was a thing it happened because of the schedule, and it's a league quirky game that they have every year. But yeah, that's exactly what you think of when you think of the Tampa Bay Joe Madden, bringing the animals in and doing the magician thing with the Cubs a couple years ago. It's it just got weird. And you could really see guys like Strope and Rizzo and Schwarber particularly dug hanging out with the Little League kids. Yeah. And it felt like that made a difference. It really did.
Yeah, and also the Pirates are bad, and you should beat the Pirates.
Pirates are very bad. Pirates are very bad. They've been very bad for this whole second half. You should have swept them, but 2 out of 3. All right, yeah. At this point, very psyched about that.
And also, I am not at all gonna knock Kinsler. I mean, obviously it sucks to walk somebody with the bases loaded, but it's his first appearance coming off the injured list, and he's immediately thrown into an incredibly high leverage situation.
It just shows you, where the bullpen is at right now. And then, Kimbrel came back. Really the biggest story besides the home road stuff this week is just it's almost like a hockey line change going on right now. There's so many guys coming up and going down to the minors. Kimbrel came back and clearly was on a pretty limited pitch count, gave up a homer immediately. And then, got a couple outs before they locked that game down. But at least Craig Kimbrel's back in the bullpen. Steve Cishek is back now as well. I'm wary about that hip problem. He's had a problem with that hip a couple of years ago too.
I think those little leaguers got in Kimbrel's head, making fun of him.
Yeah, yeah. Everyone trying to do the hawk, the little bird stance he has going on. But the main personnel moves, we've got Almora and Bote have gone down. AAA. Addison Russell is up. Kimbrel, Cishek are up. Zagunis was up for a minute. I haven't seen if I know he came up as the extra 26 man.
I'm just glad that he got to come up so that we could see the last name or the nickname Goon on a jersey.
Oh, I didn't even catch that. That he got that's pretty fun. If you're going to spend the whole year in the minors, it's fun to get to come up when you get the weird jersey one. Yeah. And we're approaching September here when the rosters expand. This is going to be a thick team. That dugout's going to be crowded. There's so many guys just sort of right on the verge of here. Because I mean, we're talking about Ben Zobrist is still working his way up in the minors. Ben Zobrist too in the minors has been slugging. Which he wasn't doing at all before. Yeah. But he's been hitting doubles and a couple of bombs.
And apparently Descalso slugging too. Much to everyone's surprise.
Yes, Descalso has hit a couple homers down there, and so we're going to see Descalso and Zobrist up pretty soon, and who knows who will go down. And if it's September 1st, then no one will have to go down. But there's going to be some shuffling to just make everyone playoff eligible here, and which hopefully comes into play.
Yeah.
But yeah, and Addison Russell's back up as well. Russell was killing the ball offensively down at AAA, but everyone is killing the ball at AAA. They say in the Pacific Coast League, AAA in general, it's a juice ball, and the PCL is a highly offensive league.
Yeah, I saw recently that Rene Rivera has like 30 home runs in
Yeah,
AAA.
and he never hit like more than 11 at any level. So, and he's 36 years old. So
how's Robel doing? Have you heard anything about him?
No, he hasn't been on the tear he was before. I think he's settled into kind of fine, but I do wonder with Robel, because his whole thing was the swing and miss problem, basically what Ian Happ was sent down to deal with this year. So I do wonder if they're kind of, now that he's back in the minors, if they're doing what they were with Happ and really focusing on that single problem, as opposed to focusing on just overall production and letting it fly. I wonder if his power numbers lately have been suppressed a little bit because he's just trying to work on the contact within the zone.
Well, yeah, I mean, as far as Russell is concerned, I think anybody who's listened to this podcast or follows us on Twitter or anything like that knows that you and I are both firmly in the camp of we do not want Russell on the team, period.
Yeah.
However, for a long time, it was like, not only is he a bad person and we don't want him on the team for that reason, but he's also playing poorly. He's not making the proper plays defensively. He doesn't seem to know the signs. And there's not really justification for him being up anyway.
Right.
I think now we're looking at, unfortunately, a little bit of a different situation where if you had Russell playing shortstop on Thursday against the Phillies, the Cubs probably win that game. And I hate saying that, but it's just the reality of who he is defensively and who Bote is not as a shortstop. Yeah. And also second, I mean, he missed 2 balls in that inning that I don't know if they were routine, but they're plays that probably should be made. And I, as much as it bothers me that he's even in the Cubs organization anymore, I do understand why they called him up this time.
I do too. Basically, it's if you're going to employ Addison Russell, then this is when you use him, and he should be your defensive replacement late. He's the only other truly major league caliber shortstop that is on the major league roster. Zach Short is a guy at AAA who still hasn't made his major league debut, but was rated the best defensive shortstop in I think it was AA last year. So he might be an option more for like next year. But if you're going to decide to employ Addison Russell, which neither of us like, and this is going back into the offseason now, but we advocated for signing Jose Iglesias, who's basically all of Addison Russell's skill set, great defensively, and the Reds got him on a minor league deal, so that would have been very easy to have. But you need to have a guy who can be an actual shortstop in a game that matters at this time of the year. And I'm a huge proponent of starting Ian Happ at second as much as possible, but I'm saying start him at second. He shouldn't be playing defensively second base at the end of the game.
Yeah.
And, once Zobrist is up, I think you'll see Zobrist there too. But that's, David Bote at second is a better play defensively than two. But their hands were tied with Russell not quite being called up yet and Javi being down for the day.
Yeah, Happ had a rough series. I mean, even before the Thursday game where he wasn't able to make those plays, in the Tuesday game, he dropped a routine pop-up.
Yeah.
And then later in the game,
team.
and then later in the game, I don't know if you watched that game, but Castellanos threw a ball to him at second that he would have had a tag play easily, and he just misplayed it.
Yeah.
And didn't come up with it. So, I mean, you and I both love Happ, and I think he's been pretty good. Offensively, at least, I think he's clearly shown that he is deserving of being with the big league team. But man, can you remember a time where there were back-to-back games that were that brutal over since 2015?
Like you said, not unless we're just picking the game against the Mets in the 2015 NLCS when Murphy hits a ball off Arrieta off his feet for a homer.
Sure.
At that game, and then pick one on either side. But no, outside of playoff games where they lost and just regular season games losing in horrific fashion. No, I can't. I mean you have to go back to the 03, 04, 03, 04.
Well, yeah, and I made that point online, and I think you would probably agree with that. I mean, the way this past week unfolded, it felt reminiscent of that horrible week in 2004, where unfortunately you and I were both at that game. But the game where it's like the last week of the season. Pryor pitches a gem. The Cubs are up 3-0 going to the bottom of the ninth, and with 2 outs, the Cubs and LaTroy Hawkins blow the save. They end up losing on a walk-off to a guy who has 1 major league home run.
Yeah.
And that week, I think they were playing the Reds at Wrigley. I think Hawkins blew another 1 or 2 saves, and before you knew it, the season was over, and they just missed the playoffs. The difference here is that you've got 40 games left, so there's time to right the ship, and also the Cubs just I don't think this is like rose-colored glasses at this point for us. The Cubs are the best team in this division. I really believe that.
They are. Well, I think they've basically had to shoot themselves in the dicks a million times to just be right at first, like they're still right there as we speak right now. So the standings are my MLB app just quit. It's been feeling what this week is like. So right now the Cubs are a half game behind St. Louis as we record this on Tuesday. St. Louis got, and it feels like, we were just talking about having the biggest lead of the season, whatever it was at 3.5 games. A little over a week ago, but St. Louis has gone 8-2 over the last 10, and Cubs are basically just 1 back in the loss column, tied for the wins. But they are better than St. Louis. They are better than Milwaukee. When we're talking about the players on this team, they're the upside for this team. But at some point, it's got to actually show up numerically.
Yep.
If the season ended today, basically it would be a 1-game playoff between Washington and the Cubs in Washington. And
I guess I would go to that game, but
I guess you would. I know you have the good juju going from that Game 5 in 2017.
Well, I have already banked on the Cubs making it to the NLDS and playing in Atlanta because I booked my flights accordingly.
Yeah, so let's hope that happens. Also, as we sit here today, the Mets are only 2 games behind the Cubs in the wild card. The Mets and Phillies are two games back. I do not, man. If we have to go to a 1-game playoff at Citi Field this year,
I don't know if I can do it.
I'm not sure I can handle it either. Let's not do that. That would either be brutal. I mean, it would be brutal. Even if the Cubs win, we might not, make it out alive.
Right.
But yeah, so let's just win the division there. We've got basically, according to Theo, Wilson Contreras' hamstring rehab is the rehab's done, and so he's just working on strengthening now. So okay, whatever that means. I mean, that's still probably another week or 2, but that it will be real.
They said 4 weeks minimum, and I think that would bring us to around like the first week in September. So I'm fine with. It's hard because it's like obviously you need his bat in the lineup, but like. I would rather they be a little overly cautious with him the same way they were with Hamels versus like, let's bring him back the day he's ready. And then he tweaks it again in September. And now you just don't have him for whatever playoff run you may or may not have.
1,000,000%. And there's no sense in bringing him back at not 100% because, the Caratini and Lucroy's played pretty well, from what I've seen. But I think Caratini, Lucroy is still a pretty solid catcher tandem right now. And you really, to get the amount of benefit you would need to have Wilson Contreras in there instead of one of those 2 guys, you need 100% Wilson Contreras. That's the only way that's a real separator. So otherwise, you might as well be sticking with these guys. So yeah, I'm with you on that. Let's wait as long as it takes, and then a couple days longer.
Right.
For Wilson.
Well, see, one thing that concerns me as we look forward. So now the Cubs, starting tonight, they have 3 games at home against the Giants, and then 3 games at home against the Nationals. So those are not necessarily gimmies, but you'd hope to go like 4-2 over the next 6, which basically is what the Cubs have done all year at home, if not better. My concern is that if the Cubs suffer some sort of like heartbreaking loss at home, how much does that fuck with them mentally to be like, well, these are the games that we're supposed to win and we have been winning, and now if we lose one of these, we're like, what the hell's going on here?
Right, because I mean, at this point of the year, with the home road thing being the way it is, it has to heap pressure on those home games where you feel like you got to win all of them, basically. Yeah. But this is the time to just put a streak together. The Cardinals have gone 8-2 over the last 10, and that's really what the Cubs need to bounce back and do after a 4-6-10.
Right.
Yeah.
And the Giants are a quintessential like 500 team. They had that one crazy streak where they won unfortunately, it was when the Cubs were playing them, but
Right.
they won, 17 of 20 or whatever it was. But basically, they have been a 500 team. And when you look at the pitching matchups, there's nothing about that particularly scares you. I mean, tonight you've got Hamels and I don't even know if I'm saying it right. Beede. I don't know if
Tyler Beede. Yeah.
Yeah. And then Darvish and Rodriguez on Wednesday, and Hendricks and our old pal Jeff Samardzija, who actually doesn't have terrible numbers this year. But that's your Thursday matchup. So
you look at them based strictly on pitching matchups. The Cubs really should go on a run here. Like these are every pitching matchup you feel pretty good about. You feel like you'd slightly favor the Cubs, and their lineup is better. So those things should translate. Yeah. Also, Adam, I know you'll like this. Did you see basically Nicholas Castellanos crying on the score today? Basically, so they read to him what Joe Madden had to say about Castellanos as a person and as a player, and Castellanos, while crying, said, "This is why I don't have a radio show, man. Damn." So he's just like, losing it.
What was the nature of what Madden had said about him?
I haven't seen it. I'm just like looking at the clip sound off right now. But yeah, let's see. Does it? Can we? Let me do a quick search for. I know you got to go here in a second, but and Castellanos. But yeah, Castellanos seems like an interesting dude, man.
I like him a lot.
Yeah, yeah, it's a lot of, and no one's really quoting it specifically. Just basically
I'll have to look it up.
Yeah, but I mean, it's the Castellanos more and more seems like could be the hitting version of Cole Hamels, where it's the guy you pick up and you think of as a rental, and then. Man, he really fits in pretty nice in that lineup.
He really does, yeah. And obviously that'll be something to be determined in terms of like how much money he would be, or right. I don't know who his agent is, but how much money they would be looking for. But yeah, I think I can't imagine it having worked out better to this point. And also defensively, he's looked fine, if not like a little better than fine.
Right. So, and looking forward, and obviously we're not really sweating next year yet, but I think it relates to a little bit of talking about the roster crunch and how many players are going up and down, Almora going down. I think at this point, you're looking at almost whatever happens, you're looking at Jason Hayward as probably an everyday center fielder next year, and Castellanos in right, or some other bat, or you're bringing, you're playing Ian Happ there. One thing I'd really like to see them do is have Ian Happ put in an offseason of second base work, because they really didn't work him at second base much, and that's part of why we're seeing these issues. He was drafted as a second baseman, but he mostly played there. But basically what Schwarber went through to become a left fielder, I think that's this offseason for Happ at second. I would really like to see.
Yeah, and he can play second until Nico is ready next year.
Yeah, till Nico, who's also working out in center a lot too. So there could also be, you could be talking about a Nico Horner center field transition to keep J.A. in right. But anyway, that's for a later time. That's for, hopefully after you plan a championship parade by accidentally winning and beating several teams that are for sure better than you. But yeah.
Hey, anything can happen. Just get there, and let's not have first of all, let's not miss the playoffs. And beyond that, let's please not have a one-game playoff in Citi Field or anywhere.
Yeah.
All right, man. Have good shows out there, and
thank you. Oklahoma City this weekend.
Hell yeah! Hopefully by the next time we're talking, the Cubs are coming off a solid homestand and getting ready to win a road series again. This time in one location for all three games.
Oh man, groundbreaking!
Citi Field.
Yeah.
All right, guys, listen to us here. I don't know what the hell I'm saying. I got to go to the dentist. I'm all thrown off. Follow us at awaygamespod on Twitter and Instagram. Email us at awaygamespodcast@gmail.com. I think that's it. We got a little sponsorship coming soon. We forgot that today, but you know what? We'll do it next time. Who cares?
Yeah, we'll see. Hell yeah, we'll start it next week.
Clearly, we're in this for the right reasons.
Yeah, we're here to make friends.